Today we are going to be talking about Mary Ann Shadd. Mary was an American-Canadian activist and journalist. She was born in 1823 on October 9th in Wilmington, Delaware, and died on June 5th, 1893 in Washington, D.C. She was the first of 13 children in a
predominantly abolitionist
family, which means a person who wants to stop or abolish slavery. Her father, Abraham Dorr Shadd, was a shoemaker and a leader within Delaware's free black community. Her mother, Harriet Parnell, was from North Carolina. Their family of 15 lived at the top of the Underground Railroad that helped former slaves seek freedom in the free states, Pennsylvania, and beyond. Growing up in an activist household had a very big impact on Mary Ann's outlook on activism and her future in the subject. However, in Wilmington, Delaware, for Black people, education was scarce in the 1820s and 30s, so Shadd's parents decided to move the family to Westchester, Pennsylvania, in hopes to get their children a real education at a Quaker-sponsored school. Surprisingly, at the young age of 16, Mary Ann returned to Wilmington and opened a school for Black children. Because of that, she became one of the many free Black women who gave their skills and education to uplift their race. By 1850, Mary had been teaching for over 10 years in a lot of different places. By this time, newspaper publishers and activists Mary and Henry Bibb, who were living in Sandwich, present-day Windsor, Ontario, reached out to her in a request for her teaching. Because of the Fugitive Slave Act of 1851, an abundance of free Black people were at risk of being sold into slavery. As a result of this, thousands of African Americans in the Free States crossed the border to Canada. In 1851, Mary decided to go to Windsor, where she built a private school for children of Black freedom seekers. It was an integrated school because Shadd was very opposed to racially segregated schools. Because schools were not publicly funded at the time, parents were to pay 1 shilling, which is less than a cent in Canadian money today. But a lot of the parents couldn't afford the prices, so Mary reached out to the AMA, the American Missionary Association, an anti-slavery religious organization, for financial aid. Despite her small salary, Mary provided her students with first-class education. In addition to her teaching, she took part in community affairs. In 1852, she published A Plea for Immigration, which described Ontario as a desirable place for enslaved and free African Americans who were experiencing increased restrictions on their lives. Her outspokenness and willingness to challenge male community leaders, both white and Black, caused controversy. Because of many reasons, Mary was fired from her job as a teacher and also changed history. Mary decided she would publish her own newspaper called the Provincial Freeman, where she could control how she shared her opinions and ideas. Shadd tried to get support from the Black community in Windsor, her family, and friends. The first article came out on the 24th of March, 1853. After the first article, Mary collected subscriptions and support. 1 year after the first paper was posted, the paper started posting weekly out of Toronto. Because of this, Mary became the first Black woman in North America to make and edit a newspaper. Under Shadd's direction, the paper became an anti-slavery newspaper and advocated Ontario as a place for Black people to settle. The paper's motto, "Self-reliance is the true road to independence," emphasized the importance of Black self-sufficiency and integration into Canadian society. Readers were advised to insist on fair treatment and, if all else failed, to take legal action. The paper also campaigned for women's rights. They provided a forum for Black women showcasing their accomplishments. After a couple of years, Mary started going on speaking tours in order to keep the paper financially afloat. The reason for the money shortages is because the target audience most likely had very little education, if any. After a valiant effort to keep the newspaper going, the paper succumbed to financial pressure and ceased publication in 1860. That same year, her spouse, Thomas F. Carey, died. Mary had been married to Thomas for 4 years and 11 months. The two of them had 2 children together, Sarah and Linton. During their marriage, the two often had 2 different residences because of both of their jobs. With the death of her husband and the demise of her newspaper, Carrie's attention turned to events in her homeland. She was hired by Dr. Martin Delany to recruit black soldiers for the Civil War. She later went on to study and practice law in Washington, D.C., being one of the very first black women to do so. Mary also became more vocal about women's suffrage in her later years. Mary Ann Shadd Cary accomplished so much in her life, to being a teacher, a community activist, a writer, a newspaper editor, a public speaker, a recruiter for the regional army, and a lawyer. She was a dedicated person and set a legacy for other African American women. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video.